I think sometimes we get lost in looking for motivation. Like I wasn't motivated to train today. Of course you weren't. Like you're not motivated. I'm not motivated every day at all, but I'm committed to the end goal. So if you're committed to the race, to your training, to whatever you want that to be, then what matters is consistency.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Tripod presented by Transition. I'm your host, Alex Warmoth. Today I'm joined by Jennifer Vollmann, a coach, athlete, mindset specialist, and head of operations for the XTRI World Tour. Jennifer helped shape and grow one of the world's most exciting extreme triathlon ecosystems, where racing isn't just about speed, but about exploration, resilience, and human experience. Jennifer, welcome to the Tripod.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So I wanted to start by maybe talking just a little bit about XTRI and extreme triathlon in general. It's something I've just started learning about recently, and a lot of people are interested in it. So would you mind, sharing a little bit more about what that is and sort of your experience with extreme triathlon?
Yeah, so extreme triathlon is triathlons in extreme places. So it's a couple different things. We have full distance and half distance, so your traditional like Ironman long course, and we have half distance as well. For the long courses, it is roughly an Ironman distance, but what you do inside of that distance is what makes it so extreme. So typically it's very cold water swims. Oftentimes you're jumping off of like boats and ferries and fjords. And then the bike always has quite a lot of climbing. I think our lowest amount of climbing is maybe 10,000 feet up to 17,000 feet of climbing on the bike. So tri bikes, road bikes, kind of depends on the course. And sometimes you're like riding across the Swiss Alps, or you're going up like, if familiar with like the Stelvio Pass is like just one of the climbs you would do like in our Icon race, for example. And then the run has a ton of climbing, usually in the the one we were talking about, Himalaya, has 12,000 feet of climbing in the run. And they could be on road, could be on trails, it kind of varies. And the other part which makes it special is you have to have a support crew. So we don't have aid stations. These are not race supported. They're point to point racing. So you start somewhere and you end like in a totally different part of the country. So you have one or two people that come with you. They drive a car, they support you. And then you always have to have a support runner for the last part of the run, for safety reasons, and also just right to have somebody there with you. And so it becomes this like team. You have a team with you really racing. So it kind of changes the whole dynamic of the race versus just your traditional triathlon setup.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really great.
How long has this been going on for?
So it first started, what most people, if you've heard of an XTRI, is probably Norseman. Norseman was like the first race of its kind and was the inspiration for all the other XTRIs. So that started in 2000 and, oh no, 2008 or 2003, one of those years.
Okay.
But it started by a couple of, guys that were like, man, let's create this like crazy race that gets us from Eidfjord, which is a fjord in Norway, across this like, huge plateau across a great glacier, and we'll go up the tallest mountain in Norway. And that was can we even do this? Is it even possible? And then a couple guys did it, and then a couple more people did, and they created a race. And then a couple crazy guys from Scotland came down. Stuart is one of them, and he's the CEO of XTRI, and they decided to replicate that in Scotland, and that became Keltman. And then a bunch of them started coming up in Switzerland, and they kind of joined together to create the XTRI World Tour. So now we have 26 races, and we have half distance, full distance. We have some gravel versions, and we do some virtual races as well. Yeah.
Very cool. And what's been your experience with extreme triathlon? Is there a triathlon that you've done that's been the most extreme?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of these. We had one in Utah for a couple of years called Starvation. And that one was I know it's a horrible name.
It's a good name.
But you start like in the middle of nowhere in Utah, and then you end up in Park City area, and you kind of run around there. And so that was I've always said that because I love I love climbing, I love trail running. So when I learned that there was ability where you could do like a road riding, because I don't like mountain biking, I was like, oh, this is my jam. And so I did that as my first race, and I loved it. And I actually won. I won it as a woman, so as a female winner. So I actually got a place to go to Norseman, which is like people try for 12 years to go to Norseman because it's so oversold. There's a ballot, it's hard to get into. So I was able then to go to Norseman, and then I was like really sold when I got to race Norseman. And then I've done Swissman, and then I have recently done a Himalayan XTRI, which is in Nepal. I did that last May, and that was like the others are extreme, but this is like a whole other level of extreme. It took 21 hours for that one.
Wow.
Yeah. When I
Wow.
when I signed up, no woman had the way the run works is you have to get to different altitude points, and if you don't make a certain time cutoff, you have to turn around and go back down. And no woman had made the final time cutoff to make it to 4,000 meters, like 13,000 feet. And so I wanted to be the first. I was the third, but three of us did it in that race on the same day. But I made it by like 30 seconds, and so it was a very
Wow.
very long 17 miles after that to try to get back up to the 4,000 meters and then to come back down. So it was
Wow.
amazing.
That is incredible. That is incredible. What is the I'm really curious the journey of your training to get to that point to from maybe going from normal triathlons to these triathlons that have, really cold swims and really high elevation gains, like you said. What does the training look like for a race like that?
Yeah, I'd say because I do still race Ironmans too. I usually do I mix them in kind of back and forth. And the biggest difference obviously is you have to climb a lot on your bike. And so I live in Arizona, and we do have a lot of kind of steady climbs. And so we like for Himalaya, we have one kind of canyon you can go down, and I would go out on a Saturday and ride it 3 times in a row, which would get me to like 11,000 feet of climbing in about 7 hours. And I would just do that on Saturdays. That's my Saturday. And a lot more strength training than I would typically would because you have to be extremely durable. And
Mhm.
lots of trail running. I'm again in Arizona, so I can be in the Grand Canyon in about 3 hours. So I ran the Grand Canyon like 4 times in my training. Um,
Wow.
I did like a full rim to the river and back just to get in as much gain as I could in my legs and hiking and running and carrying packs. We had to carry a lot of packs and stuff. So it's very different, like a lot more strength in upper body, a lot more trail running. Speed doesn't matter at all. Like it's all about because you're going from, I'll race an Ironman in 10 hours and I'm racing Himalayan in 21 hours. So like
Hmm.
it's very different levels of like what you're looking for in the bike and the speed. And it's much more about like even nutrition changes. Like I can't have like science food after 14 hours. My stomach can't do it. I know that now. So now I have to train real food. And what does that look like? How do you carry it? It's just a really different way of thinking through how you manage your body through these.
Hmm. What resources are available for people to train for these types of races? Because like you mentioned, like maybe there's strength training involved or nutrition's totally different. Do you have any recommendations for resources for anyone interested in an X-Try to
Yeah.
just be familiar with these kind of things?
We do. So we actually have a whole approach. We have a pro coach network they're all XTRI certified coaches, and they themselves, almost all of them are XTRI athletes. And they have free resources available. You can actually get a consultation call with them if you want. We actually have training programs as well, so you can join like each quarter. We have different like virtual like coaching challenges, but you can get training programs that's created by one of our like top XTRI coaches because we really want to bring more people into the sport. We recognize that when I hear myself say it too, I was like, wow, it's a little intimidating. But it really is we have extremely robust like timelines. Like really most people can finish these races. We have almost all of them are split between a high course and a low course. So if you don't make the time cutoff for a high course, there's a lower course you can finish on. Almost everybody finishes that course as long as you keep moving. So it is not out of reach as long as you're willing to like eat a lot of food, keep on going and not stop. So we want people we really are trying to grow the sport in that way. So we have training programs, we have coaches, we have a really great, robust Facebook group with lots of information on that. And then part of my job now is to help new triathletes, new athletes into XTRI get the resources. So we're actually developing a supporter guide because that can be kind of intimidating. We're developing a whole page for if you're a new athlete, what do you do? How do you train? What does all this lingo mean, etc. So
Right.
we're in the works of developing that now.
Awesome. Yeah, one thing that really sparked my interest was the destinations and the actual courses where it's like in a mountain or in a
Yes.
fjord or it's how much of XTRI is about like I guess to you is the travel and the scenery a big part of these races for you as well beyond just the sort of ultra endurance aspect of all this?
Yeah, I think the point of extra is we don't try to be a diplomatic. We don't fake courses. We don't water them down. You're not doing laps in a parking lot. Like you're not running by a Costco. We're not doing that. Like you're actually seeing, like when you race in Norway, you will have seen like half of the country. When you race in Swissman, you will go from a lake actually kind of start in Italy, and you will ride your bike over three of the major passes of the Swiss Alps, and you will end up on top of Jungfrau, which is like one of the most famous places you can go. We designed the courses to be spectacular on purpose, and they're hard because of that. Because we're not trying to find the easiest way or the path of least resistance. We're not doing downwater swims. Like we want you to actually experience harsh conditions in the mountains that are amazing that most people never get to experience. Like that's the point of it. And so our athletes are really drawn to that. So it's not hard for no purpose. It's hard because we're taking you to cool places, and it's just hard to ride your bike in the Swiss Alps. So like that's just what it is. Like, if you want to see cool things, if you want to go on top of a mountain, if you want to be at 4,000 meters in the Himalayas, you have to get yourself to 4,000 in the Himalayas. It's just hard, but that's okay. We want it to be hard. Too many things in this world have become way too easy. And so we're really focused on it's hard because things are supposed to be hard, but they're awesome because of it.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I'm curious what's the your perspective on sort of the limit of these extreme things because in my head there's kind of a spectrum of um different sports, different distances, and then this is very extreme. Once you do some of these, is there a need to do something even more extreme beyond that, or do you feel like the level of these races sort of meets almost the peak of what you're looking for, or is there something else out there that you want to do next?
Well, I think it's interesting because Norseman was the very first one of these, and as different races come up, and we have a new one in France that I'm racing in the summertime, they have gotten harder, right? Because and so this new one, Stuart and I are kind of like, this rate actually might be too hard. We don't know because nobody's raced it yet. But I'm looking at the course. I'm like, I don't know if I can make the high course because it's in the Pyrenees. It starts in Lourdes. It's like a couple of the major Tour de France climbs. It's like 17,000 feet of climbing the bike, and then you have to run. I mean, it's very ridiculous. So I might reach my limit with this race, and if that's so, we might have to like bring the race back a little bit so that it's not so outside the realm of possibility. For me personally, I've never DNF'd a race. I made the time cutoff for Himalaya. I thought maybe that would be the time that I wouldn't do the thing that I wanted to do. I haven't found that limit yet, and so until I find that limit, I'm the person that keeps trying to find it. So we'll see. Maybe I'll find it in France and be like, I'm good. I found it. Like that's all I need.
Right.
So far, I haven't found it, and so I will keep on doing kind of more extreme things because I'm just curious. It's one of those things like you start a triathlon, you do an Olympic, I'll never do an Ironman, and then you do a half. You're like, well, maybe I'll do an Ironman, and then you do one, and all of a sudden I've done like 15. Like it just becomes part of your life, and then I don't know, you kind of build into it. So it's not like a couch to Himalaya, but after a while, it just yeah, you keep on progressing.
Right. Right. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm curious. I've heard you talk a lot about kind of mindset
Mhm.
and how that plays into the sport. Um, yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned fear or you haven't DNF'd yet, but there is a chance. Like with this race in France, like it's intimidating. How do you approach Like, what sort of tools do you use to sort of train your mindset during training, and then as you're approaching these kind of races, how do you go into it with the right mindset?
Mhm. I think the important thing with fear, a lot of times, the way I describe it is like sometimes you feel fear and it's like a hot stove and you like immediately back away from it and then you don't ever want to explore it. But then it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and you resist it more and more. What you actually want to do is you want to say, like, what am I actually so afraid of? Like, you actually want to dive like totally into the fear. So it's like when you're a kid and you're scared of like monsters in the closet and then you're like, your mom takes a flashlight and you're like, oh, there's actually not monsters in the closet. Turns out they're just like sweaters. You really want to see it because usually the brain is making it like extremely dramatic and it's actually not like it's not the worst case scenario. So like you can be afraid of like failure, like what will usually if you're afraid of failing is because you're afraid of what people will think. You're making it mean all these different things about yourself. But the flip side is if you're not willing to go try it, then you're not willing to experience these other really great things that could happen. And so what I like to do is go all the way into the fear. What am I really afraid of happening? Worst case scenario is like for the Himalaya, I fail. And I made it very public I was going after this. So a lot of people will know that I failed. My daughter would know, my parents, all these other people would know. I wouldn't have hit my goal. It would be disappointing, et cetera. Am I willing to experience the worst case scenario so that I have the opportunity to race this and actually make it and do it? And I'm 100% willing to like do that. Like that's like a no brainer to me. But if you're just afraid of something, you don't go into it, then you just never do it. So for me, I think the racing becomes a really interesting way of like peeling back the fear and seeing like what's really underneath there and then going through it and then going through it. And race day, the same thing. It's kind of you're constantly on that line of like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Why am I really thinking I shouldn't do this? And then being okay with your choices. Like, okay, I'm making the choice to do this. I'm going to own the consequence. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that seems like if there's a 21-hour race ahead of you, that's got to have a pretty strong mindset there.
Yeah, well, now
Um,
you can never think about the time. Like you can never jump off the ferry and think about the end of it because then you'll just terrible. I don't want to do that.
sure.
My mindset is I race until I'm done racing. Like I just do this until I stop, and then I try to eliminate time entirely from the equation as best I
Mm,
can. I don't even look at time on my like any of my data. If I unless I need to, I don't look at it because it doesn't mean anything, really.
hmm. Could you talk more about that? Like even heart rate, or I know some people may just, I want to stay in Z2, so I'm gonna look at my watch all the time. Do you pretty much go the whole thing mostly on feel?
So I never race with heart rate. Heart rate lies so much. Like I train with heart rate, so I know what it feels like. But on race day, you're playing with heat differences. If you're at altitude, if you're nervous, if you're like, there's so many things happening with heart rate. I think it's just, and then the further on into the race, the harder it is to get your heart rate up. And so so sometimes like that's a really frustrating data point anyhow, and it just messes with your head. So I even tell my athletes, don't bother with heart rate on race day as long as you train with it enough so you can like feel into what it is. And I ride very much by power. So I ride my bike exclusively by power, and then the run is by feel. So for Himalaya especially, I knew it was like on the border of impossible to make the time cutoff, and so I knew what my bike split had to be. But I also did like the best bike split, so I knew exactly what my power profile needed to be. And then when I had my support team was telling me if I was behind on it, and so I would rode the downhills faster and more dangerously to make up the time. And I came in right on the time, and then from there I had my support runner, and then I told him you're in charge of all the pacing and the time because at that point like it was like one more thing I had to think about and I didn't want to, and so then I just let him take over that responsibility and did that. And even for like if I run Ironmans, I will look at the pace and I will just look at my pace, but I won't look at miles or time because it just messes it for me. It just is unnecessary. Like I don't need to know that I'm only 3 miles into the run. Like this is not helpful information. you know, it's going to hurt whether I slow down and go fast. And so why does it matter if I know that how many more miles I have left of it hurting? It doesn't do anything. I'd rather just look at my watch and know the pace and just stay there.
Right. Yeah, on that note of data and metrics, are there any other metrics and data you use during training? Like I've heard some people talk about heart rate variability or things like that, or just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I personally do heart rate and power. That's pretty much what I do. And then obviously I'll train closer to races. I really dial in on like the, especially for Ironman racing, like the run paces that I want to hit, and I'll do, and I'll focus a lot on that. But that's mostly what I use for data. I think some of that stuff is information. Sometimes I think it's just like putting a number to how bad I feel, but I know that I don't feel good. So do I need a watch telling me that? No. And then you get really sucked into numbers. I don't like to have a watch on me all the time. It just drives me. Like it's too much technology actually. So I prefer my athletes to be able to race by feel too, because so many times power doesn't work, heart rate doesn't work, something happens in a race, and then if you don't know how to race by feel, you're kind of screwed. And at the end of the day, that's what you really have is your body. So you have to know how to use your body to the best ability of what you have on race day, not your race plan, not what you hope to race, not what you thought you could do, but what you have on the day. And if you can't feel into that, you're screwed, basically.
Right.
It's a long
How,
race.
yeah.
either
How,
either way, or you limit yourself, right? Or you're having a spectacular day and you're not willing to go for it because you're stuck on some plan, and you might be having like the unicorn race that you missed because you're not willing to let it loose.
hmm Right. Do you have any suggestions for, just age group triathletes out there, myself included, who, yeah, I'm kind of an engineer. I like gadgets and data, so that's an easy trap for me to fall into is sort of over relying on that. Do you have any suggestions for people to, how do you develop that feel where you can maybe rely a little less on the data and kind of lean into understanding your body better and how you should be training and racing?
Well, you can make it a game, which is what I do, athletes, right? So where the data, but don't use it. So let's say you're gonna do like an hour run, and let's do 10-minute descending. So the first one's like zone 2, then zone 3, then upper zone 3. But do it by feel, but use your data. And then you can go back afterwards and see how close were you? Like, did you actually hit it? Like your feel was this, but what did the data say? And when you first start, you're probably going to be wildly off, you know? But then you'll start to get it in and get it in and get it in. And then you'll start to know, like, I could probably tell you my heart rate within 3 beats at this point because I'm
Oh, wow.
so dialed into it. Yeah. And so, but like, if you start to do that, and then also something else to do with your mind when you're running long runs or zone 2, like, okay, I'm going to stay in zone 2. I'm going to try to keep my heart rate into like this range, and then don't look at your watch and check in every 10 minutes. Are you doing it? Are you in it? Are you too fast? Like that's just how you start to develop the feel of it, and will serve you so well. And if you really get used to that, then you really will be able to like dial into that, and you won't need all the gadgets to tell you. I do think you always need power on the bike. I think that's always one thing, especially it's so easy to override. Like it's so easy. So I think that's one thing that's always needed is power on the bike for sure.
hmm hmm That's really helpful. One other thing I've heard quite a lot is even for Ironman or half Ironman, different races, like you mentioned earlier, have different temperatures or different, racing conditions. And oftentimes you may not live in a location that has high humidity, let's say, if you're racing at a location that has really high humidity. What advice do you have for athletes who are racing in different conditions than they live in? Should they go out of their way and do a training camp like in Colorado to get some elevation, or are there things they can do locally to kind of simulate that? And same with heat. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Okay, so I have lots of thoughts on altitude because I think most people don't understand it or do it right. So altitude training only works if you're willing to be there 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time and race right from there. You lose altitude fitness extremely fast. And if you go, like most people do a really poor job, well, they go into a race at altitude, but they go in like 5 days before. But you're like at the most, like down, you're the most hit by altitude within 3 to 5 days. So they're racing at like the worst possible time to race because they're most impacted by altitude. So it takes at least 2 to 3 weeks to actually get any adaptation to altitude at all. It's just not worth it otherwise. Because what happens is you can't go very fast at altitude. You can't train, you can train long, but not very hard at altitude. So you're decreasing the amount of adaptations you can get in training. Like if you're going to do a build and you go to altitude, you can't build the way you typically would. You can't do any speed. And then unless you're coming immediately racing off of it, you're going to lose all that anyhow. It doesn't make any, like a week in altitude makes zero sense. It really doesn't do very much for you. It's fun. I mean, go ride in Colorado because it's great to train in Colorado, but don't do it because you're going to get fit. Don't do it for altitude adaptation. Do it because it's awesome. The other way, so like for Himalaya, I didn't do any altitude training at all because the race starts in Pokhara, which is 3,000 feet. The bike only got up to 5,000 feet. And so I only got up very high on the run. So if you can't do altitude adaptation, the best thing to do is show up as close as you possibly can, like the day before the race, and surprise the system because the system doesn't have enough time to react to the altitude and then race the next day. So I actually just never went to altitude before the race and only got there race day. So that's the other way of doing altitude. Either you go 3 weeks before and race right then, or you don't go at all. That's the way you race at altitude and then train again. Like either you dedicate 2 to 3 weeks at altitude and race like pretty quickly afterwards, or it doesn't make any sense. So that would be the thing on that. For heat, I think like if you're racing like Kona, the World Championships, you absolutely have to, and you don't live in a place like Phoenix like I do where you have no heat. You do need to do some heat adaptation because it will just crush you. The heat and the humidity is a really big thing. But I don't think that I think that's important. And I think if you're not able to do any of that, then you have to have a really open mind to what your nutrition and hydration is going to be for that day. If you can get a sweat test, that can be really helpful because you at least can get an idea of like how much fluids you need versus how much electrolytes. And that can help you and then you can, get an idea of, because usually you'll be surprised how many like fluids you actually need to drink over a long period of time. And you can start to at least train your gut for that and get used to that, and then just be willing to like change on the fly if you need to during the race because something's not settling right, or like you need more salt or whatever like the case may be. But yeah, it's hard when there's different conditions we can't like necessarily prepare for, but we do the best we can.
Right. For heat adaptation, can you get away with wearing some extra layers like on an indoor treadmill, or do you really need to be outdoors like in a humid environment to really get some of those adaptations?
No, I mean there's a couple different like heat protocols, but there's been a lot of success with actually doing like very easy indoor rides with lots of clothes on with like no air moving. For example, like I would do rides over like a treadmill run, just easier to manage, and then you don't have the weird person like, I don't know, like a Michelin man on the treadmill.
Right.
You can also do like saunas, so you can like train and then go like use the sauna at the gym right afterwards. There's a couple different like ways you can do the heat and mix it in with the training that are possible. So yeah, there's ways of doing it that don't require like something crazy. But yeah, easy rides indoors, lots of clothes. You just can't go too hard in the heat. That's the one thing you don't want to wreck yourself.
Right. Yeah, that's really helpful. And then one other question on training. You mentioned a lot of these races have really high elevation gains, maybe on the bike, on the run. For the bike in particular, especially like during winter, I use an indoor trainer. How do is the best way to get those muscles for going uphill, like just actually training outdoor on hills, or do you, to get that volume and that muscle to go up that amount of elevation, like can you do that on an indoor trainer? Just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. So you want to do lots of low cadence work. So in the like 55 to 65 RPM range, at like a zone 3, do some threshold works there. Like you really, if you use Zwift, they have so many courses that simulate climbs. Like use those, right? Is it different when you're outside? Yes, of course, because you're not using the rest of your body to stabilize your bike, but it is not nothing. And you can definitely build into it. It's actually a really great time it's also a really great time to build like just steady threshold work. So if you do like bigger gear, a lot of threshold work. And then when it's less winter, you can go out and do some like bigger volume stuff. Like that's a good way of doing it. So there's lots of ways that you can build that kind of fitness for climbing. But you do obviously want to have some outside rides before you go ride like 12,000 feet on a mountain. The biggest things on those is it's less about will I be fit, but it's more about making sure you can descend quickly, safely too.
Mm.
Making sure there's the descending skills there, that you're comfortable, that you can, especially on the European roads are very well built and very safe, but windy, those kind of things to think about.
Mhm. Fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about the nutrition. So you mentioned one, it's like you got to bring your own or have, if you have a support person or
Yeah.
team, they help you. But just in terms of the actual whole foods versus gels or liquids kind of thing, compared to if you're doing a half or a full Ironman or something, what are some of the differences there? And I've heard some people talk about like, should you have whole foods during an Ironman or not? And I'm curious if, since you've been doing more extreme triathlons, has your perspective changed on that? Or, do you have any nutrition suggestions for people racing, half and full Ironmans, given your experience with extreme triathlon?
So I will say I am almost exclusively like science food for halves for sure. Just I use scratch super fuel and gels and Cliff Blocks, etc. For fulls, I will throw in some bananas, which is just because I have found through XTRIs that they settle my stomach well, and they're almost the same, like they almost impact you the same as like a gel, almost just as fast, but they're a little bit easier for my stomach. So I do like bananas. For XTRI racing, I start Whole Foods almost like halfway into the bike. But that is knowing that the bike is longer. The swim is also a lot colder. So if by chance you're doing an Ironman race that has a very cold swim, you have to remember that you are burning so many more calories than you think that you are just to stay warm, both before the swim and during the swim. And if you find yourself hungry on the bike, grabbing a banana or something like more solid is going to help you a lot because you really don't want to get behind. And so in XTRIs, you're typically like just hungrier quicker because just of the cold alone. And then with the climbing. And so for that, I'll do depends. Sometimes I'll find whatever like local sweet pastry thing that they have that you can like buy and use on the fly. I like Rice Krispie treats. I brought like so many Rice Krispie treats to Nepal.
That sounds good.
Yeah, because they're whole, you eat them quickly. They're basically just all carbs. Like I'm still, for me, I eat whole foods, but it's still very carb heavy because you still really just need carbs. And then, but if you see yourself racing like 21 hours like I did, I eventually added some like peanut butter to things. But I knew I didn't have to run fast. So like if my stomach's not having to move very much, I can put a lot of things in it and still do a pretty good trail run. I did like big muffins, like those types of things. But in an Ironman, I'm trying to run as fast as I can. I can't have anything in my stomach sloshing around. It doesn't work for me at all. So I'm pretty I mean, by the mile 13, I'm just drinking Coke by that point in an Ironman. So, and whatever else like, sounds fine at that point. Because you're just trying to like go as fast as you can and survive. Where the
Right.
other thing with an extra is you basically have like a rolling buffet with you because you have like your team and like whatever you want with you. And so, and then they can go to the gas station and get you stuff. Like, I mean, it's amazing, right? So you can really like not like anything you have brought and they can go get you like, I had my one support person came and got me like a hot cheese and ham sandwich before the final part of Swiss Meat. And it was the most amazing
Mm.
thing I've ever had in my life. Because it
Oh
was
yeah.
basically like a 3 mile trek straight up. And so it was great. Could eat and it was all the energy I needed. And it was warm because we were really cold. So yeah, it's just a different way of thinking of nutrition entirely.
Hmm. Wow. That sounds fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we have
This
people
is
that eat like
exciting me. I want to do one now.
yeah, full sandwich or like a hot cup of noodle soup is like amazing on those with all the salt. So it's it's just a different way of thinking through of how can I make my body move for like 18 hours is very different than how can I go as fast as I can for 10.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. And you mentioned earlier Norseman. That one is very extreme, exclusive. Like You have to qualify, if I understand correctly.
You don't have to qualify. Well, there's different a Norseman. Either you three different ways of getting in. You either qualify from one of our races, you get in through the lottery system, or they have a ballot system where there's like I think they had 6,000 people enter for 100 spots this year.
Oh, wow.
Or you race XTRI races and you collect points. So each time you race a race, you get points, and then you can enter those points. We have 100 spots just for XTRI, like we call them tri members, and the people with the most number of points will get those 100 slots. So there's three different
Oh,
ways.
very cool.
Yeah.
And then is there for someone doing their first, I guess you could do Norseman as your first if you get a slot
Yes.
potentially.
Many people, yeah,
But
they do.
okay.
Yeah.
And then are the different courses kind of ranked by difficulty, or what advice would you have to someone who's never done one but is maybe interested in doing one?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you suggest they potentially look or start?
Yeah, I will say some are more friendlier courses than other courses. So I think the first thing to consider is like, where do you really want to go? I will say some of our races have a lot of like folklore attached to them. Norseman is one of them. Celtman is another one. Celtman is amazing. It's in Scotland. It's like in the Scottish Highlands. It's a very small race. It's another one that has a really good high course and low course, so it's really accessible. The bike actually is a good TT bike course. It's longer. It's like 100 kilometers, so it's a bit long. At Ironman's 180K, just like reference points, but it has maybe 6,000 feet of climbing. It's less, or 10,000, but it's less climbing comparatively. And then the run is pretty straightforward. And then the folklore around it, like they have an after party where we have like they do like a traditional like Scottish. I'm gonna say the name wrong. Key League. It's like a traditional Scottish party, and it's like we get beers afterward. It's a really fun
Wow.
race. But that's one of those two that's oversold. You either enter the lottery or enter with your X points. But typically, if you do want another XTRI race, or you can do our virtual races, you get X points for. So you don't actually, you can just do virtual challenges on your own while you're training and collect points, and then register for like Helpman. That's a way of doing it too. So you don't actually have to like go to another race. You can just be a part of what we do to be able to get into some of these other ones. So I think that's
Oh,
a
that's
really good
cool.
one. Yeah.
How do the virtual challenges work?
So we have a bunch of them. They're called My XTRI. And so sometimes we had them themed, like we had a Project Blackout in like the holiday season. And so it was like a ninja one. And so one of the challenges where you had to go and like run by yourself, like in the dark, like take
Oh,
photos of
nice.
yourself. You had to wear an ugly sweater and train somewhere. So sometimes they're really funny, but you do have to log in your training to show that you're doing it. But then you get points for doing that. And then we have shadow races. Race is happening the same day. You can do a like different like not the full distance. You can do like different parts of the distance. So like a eighth of the distance, a sixth of the distance, and you get that many points. And you
Oh,
can do
cool.
it on yourself. You can do it virtually. You can do it outside, however you want to. So you can wrap it into your training, do the virtual race, and then get the points.
Oh,
So
very
it's
cool. So that's
yeah,
like if Norseman is happening, I can kind of feel like I'm participating virtually by
exactly.
doing a fraction of the distance.
That's exactly it. And then we have leaderboards with it. And you can, yeah, so we make it very like community based. Again, we want people to feel a part of the experience, not having to like always be in Norway or, in other parts of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, on that topic of community, so I know, Ironman races or other triathlons, there is a lot of spectators, and everyone has the fun signs, and usually there's a handful of other athletes around you during the race. At least for me, I'm kind of middle of the back, so there's some other people I can see. How is that for these extreme races? Is it, can you see other athletes, or everyone at a certain point is pretty dispersed, and then by that point, it's kind of more solo in a sense, like you and your team. Just curious that dynamic.
It actually, you are pretty close with like any other race. You'll inevitably have other people around you that are kind of the same. But what's really cool about it is their support team, they basically like your support team leapfrogs you, and so do those people. And so what you inevitably have is like a rolling cheer squad of like multiple like cars, because we have big stickers on the back to notify like who's a part of a support team race. And so, and I have been the support team for many other athletes as well. both who I've coached and friends, and then you stop and you cheer for all the athletes. Like it is very much the athletes versus the course versus athletes versus athletes. It's a totally different vibe when you come there. It's more like trail running is the best way to describe it, where people are very friendly. They're around the world. Everybody's hugging and talking and laughing, and it's very different than when you walk into an Ironman. Like it's a very different vibe. But because of that too, like the support teams get to know each other, the athletes get to know each other. It actually feels like you have like a rolling cheer team like everywhere that you go, and you will be around other athletes too. And especially on the run, many of the athletes towards the end of the race team up together, support teams team up together, and you'll have 8 people, like finishing a run together by the end of it. So it's a very, very community oriented race. All of them are, which is pretty cool. And the local organizers, the reason why we do this too is to showcase the local community. There's local volunteers, the organizers, they put a lot of time into this and connection to the community. So you have random people from villages out cheering, just people you would never get, little kids on the side of the road. Like it's a really different experience when you're like driving through like the Brazilian countryside and there's like little kids and they're cheering and there's like, like the cows next to them. And it's a wild experience actually. Yeah.
That's all. Because that's one thing I love about travel is you can experience the culture and meet different people. And how you're describing it, it's kind of mixing that endurance aspect and extreme racing with experiencing that local culture and taking something away from that too, that's really cool.
I mean, at one point there's 3 of us riding together, and this was in Swiss Man, and we got stuck because a sheep herder put all the sheep stopped us in the middle of the road. So we're just like in the middle of sheep. So we're like, well, what do we do now? So we of course took out our phones and like videotaped the sheep, and then eventually the sheep herder like moved them out of the way so we could like keep on riding our bikes. But it was one that, and you have like the cow bells, and you're like, this is ridiculous. Like that's incredible that we just are in the middle of the race and now we're stopped because of sheep like in the middle of the Swiss Alps. Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to go back really quick to sort of mindset, especially during training. Like if you're training for a half Ironman or an Ironman or an extreme triathlon, you know, in general, there's typically a lot of training hours that go into that. And a lot of that requires, consistency, dedication, being able to sit on a bike for 5 hours or doing a long indoor ride. Um, how do you personally, because you've done a lot of racing yourself and of different lengths and distances, what, how do you develop your mindset to sort of be able to do that training over and over again and keep pushing yourself to keep racing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes successful athletes successful is the willingness to be bored. And that's an overlook trait. I think we're so used to always being occupied all the time, but you have to like, some days are just really boring. And it just is, right? It's not exciting. It's the same thing and you just do it. So I think a couple of things is that, and I think sometimes we get lost in looking for motivation. Like I wasn't motivated to train today. Of course you weren't. Like you're not motivated. I'm not motivated every day at all, but I'm committed to the end goal. So if you're committed to the race, to your training, to whatever you want that to be, then what matters is consistency. So it doesn't matter if I want to train or not, or if I'm motivated or not. It's not even like the right question. If you're asking yourself, where's my motivation? You're wrong question, just not worth it at all. What you're asking for is like, am I committed to this? Yes. Okay. What do I do today? I do this. What do I do tomorrow? I do this. Do I ride the 5-hour bike ride? Okay. Am I bored? Yes, I'm bored. Okay. But that doesn't matter because I'm committed to the end goal. So I think that it's always looking for that and then just dealing with what comes up. If it's boredom, if it's frustration, if things don't go right, okay, it's one training session. What's the next? And it's always moving on to the next day. You can't let this build up because if you get focused on the negative, what didn't happen, or if you get focused on the positive and you make it mean lots of things, you're also going to get lost. So it's just, what do you do each day? move on to the next day and move on to the next day. And if you're consistent enough, you will, the key is consistency. If you're consistent enough, you're going to reach your end goal. It's the training really great and then taking a big break and then getting injured and then going really great, then jumping off, then being bored, cutting a ride by 3 hours, pretending like it's because your kid needed you, but they really didn't. Like there's all those, like, we make excuses all the time. So it's just that consistency and the commitment to the end goal that matters. Motivation doesn't matter. Boredom doesn't matter. Excitement doesn't matter. Just end goal.
That's a fascinating way to look at it. Yeah, I want to dive a little more into the boredom aspect because I have seen, that's been one of my struggles is especially on indoor rides, or I hear people say, "Oh, it's so boring, so maybe we'll use Zwift, or maybe I'll put on a movie or listen to a podcast." But it seems to be framed in terms of like, "Oh, this is boring." I hear that a lot. And I've seen some trends where people will like go on a plane ride and they'll just not look at anything just to like
Which is insane,
try to
by the
I'm
way.
gonna try to, get the tough mindset and so there's definitely those trends of like, um yeah, people trying to develop some sort of, this intense mindset where I can go through these really tough things. And do you look at it like that, or it's just like, it is going to be bored. I'm going to put on a few things, but always just reframing it back to like, I'm committed to this thing, and it's okay to be bored, and just kind of accepting that and
Yeah,
just doing the work.
I think when we get very David Goggins all the time is when we run into issues. When everything is hard, then everything will be hard. If we have to resist everything, then everything will have resistance. So if we're like, I'm gonna sit on, I mean, I travel a lot internationally, and I blows my mind the people that show up to a 9 hour flight with like nothing and like don't even like get the headphones from the people. I'm like, what are you gonna do for 9 hours? I'm having a glass of wine and watching a movie. I don't know what you're gonna do. That's crazy. The people that need it to be hard or somehow are forcing, like if you are doing endurance sports, it will be hard. Like you've already signed up for it being hard. You don't have to make it harder than it is. It's much the way to approach it is I signed up for something hard, so I'm not going to be surprised when it's hard. But you don't have to make it extra hard to somehow be tougher or stronger. Like when the moments arise that are challenging, because they will, then you deal with them. You don't push them away. You don't pretend they're not there. You don't make them something different. You sit in discomfort. You sit in boredom. You sit in sadness sometimes or in joy, whatever comes up, and you just allow it to be there. And then you keep doing the thing you're supposed to do. You keep doing the threshold. You keep staying on the pace. You keep riding for 3 hours. You just do the thing you're supposed to do. You don't have to make it extra hard. And then in those moments, though, if you say, it shouldn't be hard like this, I shouldn't be bored, it shouldn't be this way, then you're resisting it. And now that's a whole other thing that you're dealing with, right? So it's more just this allowing of things to come up as you do the things you're supposed to do. But you don't have to you don't have to like make it extra hard on yourself. And you don't have to want it to be extra hard, because then it will be extra hard. I mean, it's just
Right.
like that's what it will turn out. If you're thinking this is so hard, then it will be hard. And you don't have to do that. We can really just like allow. And then you get to race day. Now, I use Trainer Road. I watch terrible television until it gets hard and I put music on for trainer rides or whatever. Like everybody's got their own way to like get through training sessions, etc. But on race day, everybody's like, what do you think about? I was like, there are so many things to think about race day that like, it's never occurred to me that I would need anything other than like whatever's in my head on race day. Cause there's so many things happening. So I think that as long as you're comfortable, like being inside yourself in those training sessions, when it comes to race day, you're going to be okay too. Like you'll all be there as long as you allow that to happen in training.
Right.
It's that resistance that you have to let go of.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of other, so there's obviously the physical training, to train your body and your muscles to endure like these races, and training the nutrition to make sure your gut can respond well. I don't know if it's something pros do or not, but I'm curious if you do any sort of mental I know a lot of the physical training there is a mental training component to it, but exclusively mental training, like kind of visualization or anything else, anything that you can train your mind to perform better or execute well on race day. I'm curious if you have any advice or thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I use the system I use, I'll call it like intentional thoughts. So the way that I teach mindset and my ideology is that everything in life happens as just a neutral circumstance, just a fact of life. Then you have a thought about it or you make a story about it, and then that creates a feeling, and then you take action and that creates your results. So for example, let's say you had to start at the swim and you get into the water. And for me, I know this happens every 200 yards in every swim, which is like, why in the hell am I here? I don't want to be doing this. I'm like, every time. If that stays in my head through the entire swim, right? Like, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be here. The feeling is going to be anxiety. I mean, like, it's going to be terrible feelings. I'm probably going to swim way slower. I'm not going to be at the head of the game. I'm going to have a worse swim. So it's obvious to see how that goes. What you can do instead is just jump to a different thought. So instead, my thought will be focus on the swim, or I'll count my strokes, or I do want to be here, or like just get to the next buoy. Something that creates a feeling of neutrality or focus or calm. And then my actions will be focused on my swim, and I'll have a better swim because of it. So but you have to do this ahead of time. If in real time in a race, you're like, oh, what other thought can I think? You're screwed, because you don't have the mental capability because you're so focused on your body and racing. So you practice it ahead of time. You think about, what can I think about the swim, what can serve me best, like what works, and then you do it in training. Like you practice it in training. Same on the bike. What do you like to think on the bike? Like, what could that possibly be? And then the run. And then I like to also have like if things go like terribly wrong, what's my like, okay, I'm pulling this out of my like rabbit hat, trick bags. But then you practice it, and you do it in your hard sessions. You do it in your last parts of your run. You do it when you're exhausted. You do it when things suck. You do it when you're bored, so that you're used to using the intentional thoughts when things are really hard and bad, not when you're sitting like at your desk and everything is fine. So you have to like really think of them ahead of time and what works for you, and try on a couple different ones like as you're training, and you'll figure out like, oh, actually, when I think this really works well for me. Like, I like to be aggressive on the bike, and so I don't want to be calm on the bike. The swim, yes. The bike, I want to be really aggressive, and so I want to feel totally different when I ride my bike than when I swim than when I run. Some people don't feel that way. Some people like to run with joy, which is fine. I personally don't like to, but that's great for some people, right? It depends on like what your motivation is and what your why is. But so come up with those intentional thoughts. Think about, what is the feeling that brings up with you? What are likely your actions and results? And figure out what you want for each of the different parts of the race, and then start to practice them, and especially in your heavy training parts or sessions.
Hmm, that is awesome. No, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, my favorite is I'm a Savage. That's my ultimate go-to
That's
one.
the go-to.
That's my go-to. All right, all else fails, I'm gonna go with that one. It covers all sorts of different issues that might happen in a race.
Yes, yes, totally. Um, yeah, I guess so. In general, if you could, I know there's probably a lot, but if there's one thing that the average age group triathlete could do every day to improve their wellness and their mindset in general, what would it be?
Well, I would say meditation. I think that's a pretty clear one. So I would say, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, first thing in the morning, ideally, wake up, go to the bathroom, get an espresso or coffee, whatever you need, and just spend 5 minutes in quiet, can help so much. When you think about meditation, I think people think about the goal of meditation is like the complete absence of thoughts. But really, what meditation does for you, the work of it is you try to get into complete absence of thought. Inevitably, a thought comes up, and then you bring it back to quiet. It's that bringing it back to quiet that you're trying to strengthen in your brain. And so much of that involves in racing, right? You get all these crazy thoughts, and then you want to bring it back down to focus. Crazy thoughts, bring it to focus. So meditation is just a way to practice that outside of a traditional training. So sit there, try to get to quiet. Thoughts come up, bring them back to quiet. It's the same thing you do in racing, same thing you do in mindset, same thing you do in focusing. All of that is the same. And to do that every day for 5 minutes really makes a huge difference.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Yeah, I've noticed, especially when swimming for me, I know all the disciplines are pretty rhythmic in their own way, but swimming for me is I definitely feel more calm, especially like when I'm training or just doing like a long endurance session. It's just the stroke and the breathing. It's just very calming. See, I could see how meditation can even amplify some of that or spill over into when you're actually racing or training as well.
Exactly. And it makes you
Um,
really aware of your body too. And so as athletes, we are already aware of our body, but the sometimes we're like just aware of our body or like just aware of our brain, but not the two of them together. It's helpful to be aware of the two of them together. And so that's a good 5 minutes of bringing those two things together.
mhm. Awesome. Um, I guess, and then, for any athlete who's, you talked about motivation and, you know, if you're committed to something that can help get you through boredom and other things during your training. What advice do you have for people to find their motivation? I know you mentioned if you're struggling with that, like you got a bigger problem, but in the when I did my first Ironman, like that was my goal. I was like, I want to do an Ironman, like I want to challenge myself. And then actually when I finished the race, it was a strange feeling because I'd accomplished it, but then I felt a little bit of emptiness in the sense that like, okay, I finished that, but I just did all this work. Like, what was that? What was that really for? And then, I had some time off, kind of recovered, reflected. And I have two young kids, and after that race, I started thinking, maybe that wasn't my motivation. Maybe there's something deeper that I love about this sport, or so it's been kind of a journey for me finding like what's my true motivation for doing these like extreme things. But I guess for athletes who are stuck or maybe aren't sure of what their why is, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the why through all of this is is really important because it's not easy. We're not doing easy things. Like so at some point, like and that's where I says that motivation, I think of it as like it's like a lightning strike. It happens and you get motivated, you decide to do something. But that experience and being motivated just doesn't come every day. Right. So like that's the piece of it where like you can't expect that excitement to be there every day because it's not. The commitment is. And so if you're struggling to find that, yeah, I mean, I think it's thinking back to the why, to is it family? Is it proving you can do something? What's it? I think it always has to come down at the real end of the day, what is it to you? Even if you're doing it like to show your kids something, it's still you're doing it for you to be the parent that shows your kids something, right? Like it's still coming back down to you because you want it to be internally validated. If you're looking for external validation for anything that you do, you're it's I'm sorry, like it's that reevaluate because you don't want other people to tell you when you've done a good job. You don't want to ask other people to validate you. You want to do that for yourself. So whatever your why is, make sure it's coming from you. What is it that you want for yourself? What do you want to show to others? What parts do you want to bring out in yourself? What is it like for me? I'm just always motivated because I just want to see what I can do. I'm just so curious. Like, can I do that? I don't know, but I want to try. Like, I'm just for me, it's pure curiosity. I'm not proving it to anybody. I just want to see if it's possible. But some people want to show kids, whatever it is, but it has to be back to your internal validation and it can't be based off of other people or it's just too hard. Like in that mile 18 in the marathon of the Ironman, you're at that point, you're like, I don't care what anybody thinks. Just don't want to run faster than this, right? If you're not internally motivated by that point, you're going to lose it. So it has to keep going back down and be really anchored in your why personally for what that is.
Cool. Well, yeah, Jennifer, this has been a super inspiring conversation. Thank you for sharing more about XTRI and your experience doing extreme triathlons. A lot of our listeners are age group triathletes who are doing half and full Ironman, and so I think this will be super, super inspiring for them to see how you approach these topics. I guess just before we go, do you have one final piece of advice for every triathlete listening, regardless of their experience level?
Um, I would always just say, go for it and go all in on it. You know, whatever, like if ever there's something that kind of like taps your shoulder that like, oh, maybe I want to do that, but I don't know, then you should do that thing. Like that's the thing you should be going after. And if you're going to go after it, go all in on it. There's no point in doing these events or these sports or these goals if we're going to like kind of like go 70% in them. Like it's don't do that. Like life's too short. You might as well pick something that excites you and makes you want to throw up a little bit because it's so hard, and then go on and see what happens. I think that's the part that really like makes people change and evolve, because you really can. Like I think people are different people when they start a race to when they end it, and that's the power of endurance sports is we have these like amazing journeys inside training and inside races if you allow it to happen. So if something's calling you, you should do it, but do it 100%.
Awesome. Love it. Cool. Well, thanks again, Jennifer, for joining us. I'm Alex, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.